I went to fix a broken bed. I didn't expect the woman waiting by the doorway to quietly mend something broken in me. The story opens on a quiet autumn afternoon. The male narrator, Ayaan, 25, a local carpenter known for his reliability and modest demeanor, receives a service call. An old wooden bed frame has split along one of the side rails. He accepts the job as routine, just another repair in his small-town workshop's logbook. Yet the address feels different somehow. It belongs to a well-kept two-story house near the edge of town, the kind of place where the garden is neat but not fussy, where the porch light is already on even though daylight lingers. As Ayaan walks up the pathway, the soft rustle of wind through the maple trees and the faint scent of lavender from the garden create an almost storybook welcome. When the door opens, he expects to see the young woman who'd called for the repair. Instead, standing before him is Elena, mid-40s, the young woman's mother. She's dressed simply, jeans, a cream-colored sweater, but carries herself with a quiet grace that makes Ayaan suddenly aware of the dust on his sleeves. Her hair, loosely tied back, catches the afternoon light, revealing a few silver strands that somehow make her more striking, not less. Elena greets him with a polite smile that doesn't quite hide her curiosity about the man who's arrived to fix their bed. Her voice is warm, yet slightly guarded, the kind that hints at someone who has learned to keep her distance until trust is earned. Ayaan steps inside, noticing the house's atmosphere. Warm hues of oak furniture, a faint scent of baked bread still lingering from the morning, the ticking of an old wall clock. These small details make him feel as though he's entered a space with history, not just walls. She leads him down the hallway to the bedroom that needs repair. As they walk, Ayaan notices how the light from the window frames her silhouette, an unspoken softness in her posture, like someone carrying memories heavier than the tasks of the day. He doesn't stare, but he can't help feeling an odd sense of calm in her presence. In the bedroom, he examines the bed frame. A split in the oak rail, a loosened joint at the footboard. He kneels to inspect it closely, running his fingers over the grain, feeling the roughness where the wood has splintered. Elena stands a few steps behind, watching quietly, her arms loosely folded, not impatient, just thoughtful. Ayaan senses her gaze and feels unexpectedly self-conscious, though she says nothing beyond practical questions about the repair. The air in the room feels still, heavy with the scent of polished wood and the faint trace of her perfume, a mix of jasmine and something earthy, grounded. Their conversation stays polite. The cost of the repair, how long it will take, whether the bed frame can be salvaged without replacement. But beneath the practical words is a current of unspoken awareness. Two strangers noticing each other's presence in ways they can't yet name. By the time Ayaan gathers his tools to begin, he's no longer thinking of the job as merely routine. Something about this house, and the poised, quietly observant woman standing in the doorway, feels like the beginning of a story he hadn't expected to walk into. The late afternoon light filters through the bedroom curtains in warm streaks of gold, scattering across the dust that rises as Ayaan saws through a new oak rail. The gentle rasp of sandpaper fills the quiet room. Outside, a sparrow taps at the window frame, and the distant hum of a lawnmower drifts in, grounding the moment in the ordinariness of a suburban evening. Elena doesn't leave him to work alone. Instead, she lingers near the doorway at first, arms loosely crossed, watching with an expression that's more thoughtful than critical. After a while, she steps inside, brushing her palms against her jeans as though shaking off hesitation. "Do you always work this quietly?" she asks, her voice carrying a soft curiosity. Ayaan looks up briefly, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Wood listens better when you don't rush it," he replies, his tone half teasing, half sincere. The answer earns a small, genuine laugh from her, an easy sound that instantly makes the room feel less formal. Their conversation drifts in gentle waves between silence and brief exchanges. Elena asks about the kind of projects he usually does, whether he prefers building or repairing, and admits she finds the scent of fresh wood oddly comforting. At that, Ayaan nods in agreement, explaining how every piece of oak has its own personality if you know how to read the grain. His words are simple, but there's a quiet passion in the way he speaks that makes her tilt her head, studying him as though she's seeing more than just a hired carpenter. At one point, Elena kneels beside him to hold a loosened joint steady. Her sleeve brushes against his forearm as their hands align over the same piece of wood. The touch is fleeting and accidental, yet Ayaan feels a sudden awareness, like a spark that doesn't burn but lingers. Elena doesn't mention it, only tucks a stray strand of hair behind her ear, her focus returning to the task, though her shoulders carry a subtle tension. The air carries the mingled scent of sawdust and her jasmine-tinged perfume, creating an oddly intimate atmosphere in the otherwise ordinary repair job. Ayaan notices the faint calluses on her palms as she steadies the rail, a detail that makes him wonder about the life she's lived beyond the polished image she presents. Between sanding and tightening screws, Elena shares a few pieces of herself without realizing it. How her late husband used to repair things himself, how the bed frame was the first piece of furniture they bought as newlyweds. Her voice grows quieter when she mentions it, and for a moment, the weight of her memories settles gently over them both. Ayaan doesn't interrupt. Instead, he nods, keeping his eyes on the wood grain as though giving her space to speak without feeling observed. By the time the bed frame is nearly reassembled, the early evening shadows stretch across the floorboards. The job is almost done, yet neither of them seems in a hurry to finish. The silence between them no longer feels empty but comfortable, an unspoken understanding that some connections begin in small, ordinary acts, like sanding a splintered edge smooth. By the time Ayaan tightens the last joint of the bed frame, the amber glow of sunset is spilling across the hallway. He gives the rail a final tug to test its strength, only to hear a sharp crack as one of the older slats underneath snaps in two. The sound makes both of them pause. Elena steps closer, leaning in with a furrowed brow. "That didn't sound good," she says, half smiling, though her voice holds a trace of worry. Ayaan exhales slowly, crouching down to inspect the damage. "It's the center slat," he explains. "It was already weak. I'll have to cut a new one. I don't have the right size in my truck, which means I'll need to run back to the shop or come back tomorrow." For a moment, they both stay quiet, looking at the broken piece of wood on the floor. The interruption feels oddly significant, like the day itself had just been lengthened by fate's small insistence. Elena surprises herself by saying, "If it's not too late for you, you're welcome to stay for tea before you go back." She says it casually, but her tone is softer than before, almost hesitant, as though unsure whether the invitation will be misunderstood. Ayaan hesitates too, glancing toward the window where the last of the daylight is fading. "I'd like that," he replies finally, his voice low, respectful. They move to the kitchen while waiting for the kettle to whistle. The kitchen carries the same lived-in warmth as the rest of the house. Mismatched ceramic mugs drying on a rack, a single potted basil plant on the windowsill, a small painting of the sea hung near the pantry. These details, simple as they are, draw Ayaan's attention, evidence of a life stitched together with care. Elena pours tea into two chipped but charming mugs, setting one in front of him. The steam rises between them, carrying the scent of cardamom and cinnamon. Ayaan wraps his hands around the cup, feeling the warmth seep into his fingers. Their conversation begins cautiously, about the bed frame, about how often wood ages faster than expected in damp weather, but slowly drifts into more personal notes. Elena speaks of her daughter, of how the house feels too quiet now that she's at college. There's a wistfulness in her eyes that Ayaan notices but doesn't press on. At one point, Elena laughs softly about the irony of hiring a carpenter to fix something her late husband once insisted on maintaining himself. Her smile fades gently as the memory brushes close, and she lowers her gaze to her tea. Ayaan senses her shift in mood and responds not with words, but with a small gesture, resting his palm briefly on the tabletop near hers, close enough that she feels the warmth but not close enough to intrude. It's a simple offering of presence, not a touch meant to be taken the wrong way. The room grows quiet except for the soft ticking of the kitchen clock and the distant call of a night bird outside. The silence is not heavy. It's companionable, as if two people who began the day as strangers have found a thin, delicate thread of understanding. By the time Ayaan leaves to fetch the new slat, the sky is painted in streaks of purple and rose. Elena walks him to the door, standing with her arms wrapped loosely around herself against the evening breeze. "Drive safe," she says, her voice carrying the kind of warmth usually reserved for someone she's known much longer. Ayaan nods, feeling the echo of her words linger even after he stepped off the porch, an unspoken acknowledgement that something quiet but significant has begun to shift between them. The next afternoon arrives wrapped in a drizzle of rain. Fine droplets bead on Ayaan's jacket as he walks up the familiar garden path, carrying a fresh oak slat under one arm. The house looks different in the damp light, its white porch rail glistening with rain, the garden's lavender bending low under the weight of water. When Elena opens the door, she's dressed in a soft charcoal cardigan, her hair gathered into a loose braid that rests over her shoulder. The gray weather has given her cheeks a faint rosy tint. "You didn't have to come so soon," she says as she steps aside to let him in, her voice touched with the quiet warmth of someone genuinely pleased to see him again. Ayaan shrugs lightly, trying to keep his tone even. Didn't want to leave the job half-finished. Besides, the new wood needs to set before it swells with the rain. They share a brief smile that feels easier than the ones exchanged yesterday. The unspoken distance between them has shrunk, not because of words, but because of the quiet familiarity that comes after sharing tea and a sliver of personal history. Inside the bedroom, Ayaan lays out his tools and the fresh slat, its pale surface smooth beneath his fingers. Elena hovers nearby at first, then pulls a chair close to the doorframe, as if intending to keep him company without intruding. She folds her hands loosely in her lap, her posture relaxed yet attentive. As he works, the sound of rain tapping against the window fills the pauses in their conversation. Ayaan breaks the silence first. "You mentioned yesterday that the bed was one of the first pieces you and your husband bought. Did you build a lot together?" Elena's expression softens at the memory. "Not build exactly. We painted walls, planted the garden, argued about curtain colors. The bed was the only thing we both agreed on immediately." She lets out a quiet laugh that fades as she adds, "It's strange how an object can hold so many pieces of a life." Ayaan listens while fitting the slat into place, careful not to interrupt. "Wood remembers," he says finally, almost as if speaking to the bed frame. "Every mark tells a story." For a moment, the room is filled with the scent of sawdust and rain. Elena watches him work, noticing how his hands move with steady patience, as though he's not just repairing furniture, but tending to something more fragile. The conversation turns toward quieter confessions, Elena speaking about the quietness of the house since her daughter left for college, how she sometimes avoids sitting in the living room at night because it feels too empty. Ayaan shares, in his understated way, how he chose carpentry after his father's passing because working with his hands felt like a way to stay grounded when words failed him. At one point, when Elena leans over to pass him a small box of screws, their fingers brush, an accidental touch, but neither of them pulls away too quickly. The contact is brief, yet carries a charge of something unspoken, mutual recognition of their shared solitude. When the final slat is secured, Ayaan steps back to test the bed's sturdiness. Elena sits gently on the edge to feel it hold. The mattress creaks softly but remains firm. She looks up at him with a quiet smile that reaches her eyes. "Thank you," she says. "It's strange, but it feels lighter in here now." Ayaan gives a small nod, unable to explain how he understands her meaning. That fixing the bed was somehow also about mending a piece of memory. The rain has stopped by the time he packs up his tools, but droplets still cling to the leaves outside. Elena walks him to the door again, pausing as though about to say more, but settling for a simple, "See you tomorrow? You'll check if the frame holds." "I will," Ayaan replies, and for a moment their shared glance lingers longer than necessary. Warm, unhurried, and full of things not yet said. The following evening is cool and crisp, with the scent of wet earth lingering after a day of scattered rain. Ayaan returns as promised to make sure the newly repaired bed frame has settled properly. The last of the daylight hangs low, turning the sky a muted lavender as he parks his truck by the curb. Elena greets him at the door with a mug of tea already in hand. "For you," she says lightly, offering it as if they've known each other much longer than a few days. Ayaan accepts with a grateful smile, the warmth of the ceramic mug seeping into his chilled fingers. In the bedroom, the bed frame holds firm. No creaks, no wobble. Ayaan checks the joints once more for good measure. "Looks like it's good as new," he says, dusting his palms together. "Better than new," Elena replies, her tone carrying more gratitude than the words themselves. Her smile lingers as she adds, "Stay for dinner? It's nothing fancy, just soup and bread, but it's warm." The invitation feels casual, but the way her eyes hold his makes it something more, an offer of company, not just a meal. Ayaan hesitates for a heartbeat, then nods. "I'd like that." They settle at the small wooden dining table near the kitchen window. A single candle flickers between them, casting soft light on the ceramic bowls of steaming lentil soup. Outside, the night air hums with the sound of crickets. Their conversation begins in small, unhurried exchanges about work and weather. But gradually, Elena shares stories from her past, about her daughter's stubborn streak as a child, about the summer they painted the house's shutters bright blue on a whim, about how the scent of rain always reminds her of her late husband's garden boots drying by the door. Ayaan listens with the same quiet attentiveness he gives to the grain of wood, occasionally asking gentle questions that invite her to share more. His voice is steady, never probing, and it makes her feel as though her stories are safe with him. At one point, when Elena leans forward to gesture at a funny memory, her sleeve brushes against his wrist. Neither of them flinches or moves away. The contact is natural, almost inevitable, like a thread pulling two people a little closer without their noticing. In turn, Ayaan talks about his early years learning carpentry, how his father taught him to respect the weight of each tool, how his first project was a crooked birdhouse that still hangs outside his mother's kitchen window. Elena laughs softly at that, the sound warm and unguarded. As they linger over the last of their soup, the candle burns low, the flame shrinking into a gentle glow. The house feels quiet yet alive with the cadence of their shared stories. When Elena arises to clear the dishes, Ayaan instinctively reaches out to take the bowl from her hands. Their fingers meet briefly over the smooth edge of the ceramic, just a brush of skin, but enough to carry a soft current of something unspoken. Before he leaves, Elena walks him to the front porch. The porch light bathes them both in a gentle golden hue. The air carries the scent of damp grass, and for a moment, neither of them speaks. There's no need. Something has shifted again, quietly but undeniably, in the space between them. "Thank you for staying," she says finally, her voice soft but certain. "Thank you for dinner," he replies. Their exchange is simple, but as Ayaan steps down the porch steps and heads toward his truck, he feels the warmth of that evening stay with him, settling somewhere deep beneath the cool night air. A sudden autumn storm rolls in the next evening, turning the sky a bruised gray and sending gusts of wind rattling the porch steps. Ayaan pulls his truck into the driveway just as fat raindrops begin to fall. He's come by to deliver a small wooden jewelry box he'd promised to fix for Elena after spotting it cracked on her shelf the night before. Elena answers the door in a soft blue cardigan, the sleeves pushed up to her elbows. Her hair is loose tonight, slightly damp from when she'd stepped out earlier to cover the garden plants from the storm. Ayaan notices the faint curls at the ends that the rain has coaxed out of her normally smooth hair. "Perfect timing," she says, stepping aside so he can enter. "The wind's about to pull the shutters off the hinges. I can tighten them before I leave," Ayaan offers with a small smile. Inside, the house feels even warmer against the sound of rain pelting the windows. He places the repaired jewelry box on the kitchen counter. The box, though simple, has been polished back to life, the crack barely visible now. Elena traces her fingers across the lid and smiles, soft, genuine, touched. "Thank you," she says, her voice quieter than usual. "It's one of the few things I kept from my grandmother. I thought it was beyond saving. It just needed some care," Ayaan replies. The thunder outside rumbles low, and for a moment the lights flicker. Elena glances toward the window, her brows knitting slightly. "I always hate storms when I'm alone," she admits, then lets out a short laugh, almost embarrassed at her own confession. Ayaan senses the vulnerability in her tone and responds gently, "You're not alone tonight." The words hang between them, simple, yet carrying a weight neither of them fully acknowledges. Later, as he inspects the shutters near the porch, the rain intensifies. By the time he steps back inside, his jacket is damp along the shoulders. Elena hands him a towel without a word, their fingers brushing briefly. Her hand is warm against his cool skin, an almost instinctive gesture of care. They find themselves in the living room afterward, sitting on opposite ends of the old sofa with cups of hot tea in hand. The storm rattles the windows, the candle on the coffee table flickers, and the steady drumming of rain creates a cocoon-like quiet around them. Their conversation drifts toward the more personal again. Elena talks about the years after her husband's passing, the silence, the way she learned to fill it with gardening and reading. Her voice catches slightly when she admits how much she misses having someone to share the small, ordinary things with, like tea on a rainy night. Ayaan listens without interrupting, his tea cooling slowly in his palms. "I get that," he says after a moment. "When my father passed, I thought I'd never be able to talk about certain things again. The house still feels quieter without him." Their eyes meet briefly over the rim of their cups. There's no rush to fill the silence that follows. The air between them feels heavier, but not in a burdensome way, more like a shared understanding settling in. At one point, the candlelight flickers low, and Elena shifts slightly closer, almost unconsciously, as though drawn by the warmth in his presence. Her knee brushes lightly against his leg. Neither of them moves away. The storm outside gradually begins to ease, but the quiet inside remains, the kind of quiet that makes unspoken feelings feel closer to the surface. When Ayaan finally stands to leave, Elena walks him to the door. The rain has softened into a mist, and the porch light glows like a halo around her. "Thank you," she says simply, not just for the repaired shutters or the jewelry box, but for staying through the storm. A week after the storm, the sky finally clears into a pale blue afternoon. The garden looks freshly washed, lavender stems upright again, their scent stronger than before. Ayaan parks his truck by the curb, carrying a small bundle of sandpaper and polish for one last touch-up on the repaired bed frame. Elena opens the door before he can knock, as though she's been listening for the sound of his footsteps on the gravel path. She's dressed simply, soft linen shirt, faded jeans, but there's an ease in her posture that wasn't there the first day they met. "Come in," she says, smiling in a way that feels less guarded now. "I think the bed's been waiting for you to sign off on it." Inside the bedroom, sunlight pools across the quilt in warm patches. Ayaan kneels beside the rail, running his hand along the smooth grain of the wood. He sands a few rough edges and applies a final coat of polish, the oak glowing a richer hue under the afternoon light. Elena watches from the doorway, her arms folded loosely as though embracing herself. "I never thought a repaired bed could feel like such a milestone," she says quietly. Ayaan looks up at her, a small, knowing smile tugging at his lips. "Sometimes it's not the wood you're fixing." She tilts her head at that, as if wanting to reply but letting the words linger instead. They move to the kitchen where Elena has prepared tea and a small plate of lemon biscuits. Their conversation flows easily now, about the garden, about the cool breeze that's come with autumn, about how her daughter has been texting pictures from college. At one point, Elena admits softly, "When the bed broke, it felt like another thing in the house was giving up on me. I didn't realize how much that feeling had been sitting on my shoulders until you fixed it." Her confession is quiet, almost fragile. Ayaan doesn't rush to fill the space that follows. Instead, he reaches across the table, letting his hand rest near hers on the wooden surface, not touching it first, just close enough to bridge the distance. When her fingers shift to rest lightly over his, the gesture is gentle, steady, carrying more meaning than words could have. Neither pulls away. "I'm glad I came that day," he says after a pause. "I thought I was here for a repair, but I think I found something I wasn't looking for." Elena meets his gaze, her smile faint but warm. "Me too," she answers simply. The late afternoon sunlight slides across the kitchen tiles, softening the edges of the room. The air smells faintly of tea leaves and polished wood, a comforting blend that seems to belong to both of them now. As Ayaan prepares to leave, Elena walks him to the front porch. They linger by the doorway, not out of hesitation but as if reluctant to let the moment end. "Will you visit even when there's nothing left to fix?" she asks, her tone half teasing, half earnest. Ayaan chuckles softly, meeting her eyes. "I'd like to." Their parting isn't marked by grand gestures, only by the warmth of shared smiles and the quiet understanding that something new has begun to grow between them, steady and unhurried, like wood settling into its frame after being mended. From the garden path, Ayaan glances back once more at the house. The window curtains sway gently in the breeze, and for the first time since he arrived days ago, the place looks not just repaired but alive, like a home finding its rhythm again. Thank you for sharing this journey with us. If you felt the warmth in Ayaan and Elena's story, tap the red heart button, share it with someone who loves a slow burn romance, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about unexpected connections and second chances.